So I got myself an email from Chase, and he went and made his own Nuka-Cola sign, but having some struggle buses with the Dremel. He has a blog, and he says he's a fan of this funny Russian guy, which I'm assuming is me, that makes signs with lots of skill and few tools. Alright, we'll let it slide. And so we can go through the process here and see what's going on. I should probably learn how to screen share, but I'll just record for now. And so we can see the lines are a little bit kind of jumpy and wiggly. See in the end result here, all the lines are kind of squiggly. It's not bad, but like this part right here looks a little odd. So we'll go step into the magical place and see if we can kind of analyze some of my arts and crafts. But one shout out I want to give to was Manny. This was his first project. I remember him reaching out a couple months ago, and we've been chatting on Instagram since. And then look at the stuff he's doing now. Like, that's pretty cool. The only thing, so we got the 76ers here, which is really ambitious project. But we can see right here, see how like those lines are not quite perfect either. So this way I figure we'll address both the imperfections in line in this project as well as Chase's with the Nuka-Cola. So let's step into the magical garage and see what we can do. Right. So it's actually a decent day. 2 days from now Florida will finally cool off, but it's been hot as hell. Right, I set up a couple projects over here so we can analyze it. They're all a little bit different. The Dremel and a couple pieces of plywood, so I can show on unfinished wood what I do and how I would go about it. But let's look at the Dremel first. This is the basic rotary tool Dremel that I got 3-4 years ago or something along those lines. It's been working great since it was like something like $17. It came in this little box. It has an extension tool, so this way you don't have to hold this whole thing and you can just use that attached here, but I'm not smart enough, so I haven't been able to figure out. I don't really use it for anything. The only thing I do, and so this Dremel came with the box, this guy, and this box of random shenanigans. These extra bits, especially this savage looking blades I bought, I was gonna cut the Montero bumpers with them, but I was too impatient. By the time they came in, I just hacked it all off with a jigsaw. Not that we don't know how to do that. And so the only ones I've used really is two little ones. So one is more like a burr rounded one, and the other one is more sharp one. And I'll show you where I use that. So generally I use two types of plywood, either this kind of janky textured one, which I actually prefer for most of my project, or this nice flat one. So if the project is more precise, then I use the nicer one. If the project is better off being kind of rough, then I use the rough plywood. So like for Vault Boy, I've done one, it's on my back porch out of smooth, and I don't like it as much, so I prefer like all these imperfections. And so for most of that time, I use the big burr like that, bigger, and you can see some of the imperfections here, like the holes and so forth, and I'll talk about this in a little bit. And then for the smaller doodles, like this one I messed up and I overdid the line, so I'm gonna do a new Dogecoin before I'll make an official video. But I use this little guy, and the beautiful part about that is that in this case I have to brush manually by hand with all the paint and whatnot. And then here what I do is most of this is done with a marker, which speeds up my process dramatically. Now I do cheat a little bit here, so what I do is, like you can see the lines pretty deep here, I do now marker it first and then I finish brushing it, which saves me some time. Not as fast as only using the marker, but still. And so like if we look at the letters, you can see that there is the Dremel in it, but it's very kind of subtle, and the reason you can see more of it here is because I went over with the gold paint a little bit because I wanted it looking a little bit weathered. So bigger burr on the rougher wood, finer burr on the fancier wood, and it's just usually what I do. I've done the bigger, nicer wood as well, but I don't generally do it anymore because I cheat and I use the Sharpies. Let's see where they're at. So I use this kind of Sharpie to make sure that it just speeds up my painting quite a bit. So now let's go about some techniques. Alright, I knew this whiteboard would come in handy for once, so let's try to be like an emeritus professor here and do it a little bit. So generally the trick is when you're doodling, so if you have uneven kind of rough plywood, what you want to do is when you're moving the Dremel along, you don't want to follow all these contours. What you want to do is you're going to glide it across and then glide it across again. So over time you have kind of a nice, somewhat even pattern rather than, because otherwise what you'll have is much deeper holes and they'll all be visible, and I'll show you on my work. Since a bunch of that stuff was out of shot, try it again. So imagine, let's say we'll do like the Wu-Tang. I don't remember how exactly it is, something like that. But so when we're drawing something like this, we don't want this wave to be wobbly, and so when a lot of times we have a lot of errors start coming in with stencil and the lines are like a little bit too perfect. People try to follow the lines too precise. Instead, just gonna use broad strokes, and then when you cut stuff out, don't be too precise as well, if that makes sense. My general advice will be when you're using a Dremel is to don't follow like the imperfection and so forth, but just let your wrist rest and then just kind of skim it along, nice and easy. Or pull it this way. Generally kind of don't push the Dremel a little because it'll get buried, and so if you look here you can see where, like right here, it's obviously a little bit deeper, or right there it's a little bit deeper. And then the other thing too, if your line is a little bit jagged, like let the paint follow it, because you can see like right here my paint is overlapping a little bit further than where the Dremel line is, like right here, because what I want is from far away, I just want like a straightish line. You can see a little imperfection like right here, a little bit of a wobble, and so the Dremel marks are just a guideline. This one is not Dremel, this is just imperfection on the wood, and you can see like here actually I think we over Dremeled a little bit. Here I go a little bit over. And so it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but let your eyes figure it out. Let your experience over time show you what's best, whether it's best to Dremel very precise line, or just kind of cheat, which is what Russians do anyways, and follow the line kind of as a suggestion, and then make the brush, because it's easier to go, you know, when you have a brush and you just smoothly kind of go across. On this kind of plywood, and it's a little bit harder because sometimes it wants to dip in and out of the line, so you have to experiment with different brushes how you paint. But also when you just stencil something, you know, if you stencil something here, like we'll do a Batman logo, a lot of times when you try to jigsaw it out or something like that, people will try to fold the line precisely, and instead just follow like the big curve. If you go in here and you kind of wiggling in, wiggling out, this is one smooth turn, so it should be at no point in and out. It should be just a slight cut in as you cut, and the same thing when you Dremel in. Just plant your hand like this and just go zzz, and then reposition, and kind of learn. Possibly that not a bad experience would be just to kind of learn to draw some kind of smooth lines in a little bit more of a relaxed fashion, and then generally it'll come out quite a bit smoother in the end. When you're applying pressure with it, apply very little and let it skim the surface. Don't let it get buried in it, because then you're going to create these deeper divots, and then the Dremel will start catching also, because a lot of times you'll find it's an, especially on the rough wood like that, it will go from rough wood to smooth wood to rough wood, just like as you can see. So transition from this to this will usually get buried deeper, this will resist buried deeper, and so we're gonna have like this really weird zigzag pattern. Right here it's actually quite obvious, you can see the imperfection, but a lot of times, so you just want to just skim it along and kind of let it apply very light pressure. If you ever used a grinder before and not the app, it'll really help to know kind of how this feels. And even the Dremel itself has this little grinding disc, which the first time I tried to use it I immediately proceeded to snap several of them, so do wear eye protection because they'll fly right off. And so you just learn how to just barely touch it and let some of that gravity and the high speed rotation take care of doing all the Dremeling and all the lines. And you can see here like my painting, I dipped over a little bit, but we step away a little bit and it's perfectly good. So you learn kind of to accept imperfections and let the paint follow the lines and overlap if we need to. Really cool question. I actually really enjoyed kind of nerding out, because I realized a lot of this stuff I learned just doodling around my garage and didn't really read manuals or anything like that. So a lot of times I don't even process how some of this has been done and so forth. But one thing I'd recommend also in Chase's case for that Nuka-Cola sign, dry brush it. I just did the little video on the secret Russian techniques. So adding a little bit of this darkness, especially to the Nuka-Cola sign, will really help with the distressed look, because otherwise you'll realize something is missing. And let's go look at my Nuka-Cola sign on my back porch. Actually, it is. I still love this sign. So actually, I don't think I dry brushed this one a whole lot, but you can see the edges are darkened, and so that it just misses that sign that you send me. It's white and red, and a little bit of distress, which I think you can add a little more. But what it needs is a little more grunge, a little bit more darkness. And so if you just add a little more dark edges and just dry brush it, I don't know if this has been dry brushed, and it'll just generally look better. But overall, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you got any questions, let me know. Great success, and I got a few more things that we're building.